I sat in my chair at work, staring blankly at the desk in front of me. My mind churned with anger and disbelief, a cocktail of emotions that had been building for weeks. Work usually distracted me, but today, it couldn't touch the storm inside me. I hadn't seen much of my son this year. My time with him had been stolen by this damn virus, and that alone made me bitter. But nothing, absolutely nothing, compared to the gut-wrenching betrayal I uncovered in September. My wife of 5 years was cheating on me. I'd spent the last few weeks digging for answers. It started as suspicion but turned into an obsession. Every piece of evidence, every late-night text she sent, every unexplained absence, it was like a bottomless pit I couldn't stop falling into. At home, I was forced to play the part of the clueless husband. Pretending everything was fine was its own hell. I'd sit across from her at dinner, biting my tongue when all I wanted to do was scream. She'd hug me, kiss me, act like the loving wife, and it made my skin crawl. I couldn't even bring myself to sleep in our bed anymore. It felt tainted. For almost 2 months, I'd camped out in the living room, avoiding her touch and making excuses. When she accused me of cheating, I almost laughed. The sheer irony of it made me sick. She couldn't fathom why I was distant, why I flinched at her touch. The gaslighting was relentless. "Why don't you love me anymore?" she'd ask, tears welling up in her eyes. "Are you seeing someone else?" I wanted to throw it all in her face, the lies, the texts, the photos I had taken. But my lawyer had advised me otherwise. Not yet. Hold on. Wait. Those words had become my mantra, though each day stretched into an eternity. September 25th. The day everything came crashing down. I'd been at work, repairing a wrecked truck, when a slip of the wrench sent jagged metal slicing into my leg. Blood poured everywhere, and I needed stitches, fast. My first instinct was to call my wife. She didn't answer. I called again. No response. Text after text went ignored. An hour later, I gave up and called an Uber. As the car turned onto my street, I saw her standing in our doorway. She wasn't alone. She was locked in a passionate kiss with another man, the manager at her work. The pain in my leg was nothing compared to the pain in my chest. I asked the driver to stop, pulled out my phone, and snapped a few photos. "Keep driving," I muttered, my voice hollow. I couldn't go home, not then. Instead, I returned to the shop, sat in the break room, and stared at the table for hours. That night, when I finally returned home, she acted concerned, playing the caring wife like she always did. "How was your day?" she asked with a sweet smile. I clenched my fists, forcing myself to stay calm. "Busy," I said, my voice cold. For the next week, I kept my distance, watching her lie effortlessly about her day, knowing exactly where she had been and with whom. The knowledge festered inside me, each unanswered question another stab to the gut. But I wasn't done yet. If she thought her lies could bury the truth, she was wrong. I would dig deeper, gather every piece of evidence, and when the time came, I would destroy the web of deceit she'd spun around me. The week after I caught her with her lover, I became a man on a mission. Every lie she told me was another thread in the web I was determined to unravel. I wasn't content with just knowing. I needed proof, concrete and undeniable. It wasn't just about the betrayal anymore. It was about reclaiming my dignity. If I was going to confront her, I wasn't walking in with accusations she could twist or deny. I needed something she couldn't explain away. The first place I looked was her phone. She wasn't careless with it. It was always locked, always nearby. But one night, after she'd had a little too much wine and passed out on the couch, I seized the opportunity. Her password wasn't hard to figure out. Birthdays, anniversary dates, even her pet's name, I went through them all until I struck gold. I scrolled through her messages, my stomach twisting with every word. Her texts with him were explicit, shameless. Plans to meet, complaints about me, and promises of a future together. "Can't wait to see you again tomorrow. He's working late, so we'll have the place to ourselves." My grip on her phone tightened, the fury rising in my chest. I took screenshots of everything and sent them to myself. This was just the beginning. The next step was her finances. I had access to our joint accounts and her credit card statements. At first glance, nothing seemed out of the ordinary. Groceries, gas, a few online purchases. But as I dug deeper, a pattern emerged: frequent charges at restaurants I'd never been to, hotels I'd never stayed in, and a suspicious number of business lunches. One charge, in particular, caught my attention: a weekend getaway to a nearby resort. She had claimed it was a work retreat. Work retreat my ass. I printed the statements, highlighting every suspicious transaction. If I was going to confront her, I wanted every detail in black and white. The hardest part of my investigation was shadowing her. I hated it. I hated what it made me feel, like I was the one invading her privacy. But I needed to see it for myself. One Thursday evening, she told me she was working late. My gut told me otherwise. I parked a few blocks from her office and waited. Sure enough, she wasn't working. She and her manager walked out together, laughing like teenagers. They drove to a small bar on the other side of town, a place where they probably thought no one would see them. I didn't confront them. I didn't even go inside. I just watched, my phone recording every second. By the end of the week, I thought I had seen it all. The texts, the secret rendezvous, the blatant lies, I thought I knew how deep the betrayal went. But then I found the stash. It was hidden in the back of her closet, behind a stack of old shoe boxes. A small envelope filled with photos and letters, love notes from him, keepsakes from their time together. One letter, in particular, made my blood run cold. I know he'll never agree to sell the house, but once you've got the divorce papers ready, we can start fresh in the city. Just imagine, no more sneaking around. Just us, free and clear. I slammed the envelope down, my hands trembling with rage. She wasn't just cheating on me, she was planning to take everything I'd worked for, everything we'd built together, and throw it away for some sleazy office affair. That night, I didn't confront her. I wanted to scream at her, throw the evidence in her face, and demand answers. But I held back. Instead, I called my lawyer and laid everything out: the texts, the photos, the financial records, the letters. She's planning to file for divorce and take the house, I said, my voice tight. The lawyer was calm. Let her think she's in control. We'll be ready when the time comes. In the meantime, keep gathering evidence. The more we have, the stronger your case will be. As I hung up, I realized that my anger was no longer my driving force. Now, it was strategy. Rebecca thought she had me fooled, thought she could blindside me with her plans. But I wasn't the fool she thought I was. After discovering the letters and photographs, I spent the next few days laying low. Rebecca carried on as if nothing was wrong, her routine unchanged. If anything, she seemed more relaxed, likely believing her lies were still safe. I played my part perfectly, pretending to be distant because of work stress, keeping my frustration hidden. But inside, I was seething, each day bringing me closer to the moment I'd lay everything out. One evening, while picking up dinner from a local restaurant, I spotted Rebecca's lover, Eric, sitting at the bar. He was alone, nursing a drink and scrolling through his phone. Seeing him in the flesh made my blood boil, but I forced myself to stay calm. Instead of confronting him, I chose a different tactic. I took a seat a few stools away, ordered a drink, and pretended to be engrossed in my phone. From the corner of my eye, I watched him carefully. Within a few minutes, he received a call. His demeanor changed instantly, his smug smile replaced by a more animated, almost nervous energy. "Yeah, babe, I'm still at work," he said, glancing at the time. "Won't be home for another hour or so. I'll text you when I'm on my way." I smirked. It wasn't Rebecca on the other end of the line, he was lying to someone else. Interesting, I thought. That encounter gave me an idea. If Eric was lying to his own partner, he was juggling just as much as Rebecca. And people like that make mistakes. I reached out to Jack Monroe, a private investigator recommended by my lawyer. "I need you to dig into Eric Dalton," I said. His personal life, his work life, everything. If there's dirt, I want it. Jack nodded. You've already done half the work, but I'll make sure we don't miss a thing. Within days, Jack uncovered a goldmine. Eric wasn't just a cheater, he had been embezzling from their company, using Rebecca as a cover. Expense reports, falsified invoices, and unauthorized bonuses, it was all there, and Jack had the evidence to prove it. Armed with the new information, I began piecing together the perfect plan. Rebecca thought she was in control, but she didn't realize the foundation of her scheme was crumbling beneath her. That weekend, I suggested we have a family dinner, something we hadn't done in weeks. It'll be nice to spend some time together, I said, feigning sincerity. Rebecca hesitated, likely juggling her plans with Eric, but eventually agreed. That Saturday evening, as we sat around the table with Lily, I couldn't help but notice how Rebecca looked almost content. She laughed at Lily's stories, teased me about my cooking, and even made a toast to new beginnings. The hypocrisy of it all was nauseating. After dinner, as Rebecca cleared the table, Lily pulled me aside. "Dad," she whispered, her tone hesitant, "Mom's been acting weird lately. Is everything okay between you two?" I looked into her worried eyes, my heart sinking. Lily deserved better than this, better than the lies and the tension that had filled our home. "We're fine," I said gently, placing a hand on her shoulder. "But thank you for checking in. You're a smart kid, Emily. Never stop trusting your instincts." Her brow furrowed, but she nodded. "Okay. Just let me know if you need anything." As she headed upstairs, I clenched my fists. Rebecca's betrayal wasn't just hurting me, it was affecting our daughter. And that was something I couldn't forgive. That night, after Rebecca had gone to bed, I sat in my study, reviewing everything one last time, the texts, the financial records, the photos, the letters, and now the proof of Eric's embezzlement. I called my lawyer. "I'm ready," I said. "Let's proceed." Over the next few days, my legal team worked to secure my assets, freezing accounts Rebecca could access and ensuring the house was protected. Meanwhile, Jack finalized his report on Eric, tying every loose end into a neat, incriminating package. Rebecca and Eric thought they were untouchable, but they were about to learn otherwise. By the time I was ready to confront Rebecca, every detail had been meticulously prepared. My lawyer, Jack, and I had gone over every scenario, anticipating her reactions and counterarguments. I wasn't just confronting her, I was dismantling her lies with precision. It was a Wednesday evening when I decided to strike. Rebecca was at home, scrolling through her phone while lounging on the couch. The sight of her, so carefree and unbothered, fueled my resolve. "Rebecca," I said, my tone steady as I stood in the doorway. She glanced up, a faint smile on her face. "Hey, you're home early. What's up?" I stepped into the living room, holding a folder thick with documents. "We need to talk." Rebecca's smile faltered. "About what?" I sat across from her, placing the folder on the coffee table. "About this," I said, sliding it toward her. She hesitated before picking it up, flipping through the contents. Her face drained of color as she scanned the text messages, the photos, and the financial records. "What is this?" she demanded, her voice trembling. "It's the truth," I said calmly. "The truth about your affair, your lies, and the plans you've been making behind my back." She slammed the folder shut, her eyes flashing with anger. "You've been spying on me?" "I've been protecting myself," I shot back. "While you've been sneaking around with Eric and planning to take everything I've worked for, I've been making sure you don't succeed." Rebecca stood, clutching the folder. "This doesn't mean anything," she said, her voice rising. "You've twisted everything. Eric and I—" "Don't," I interrupted, my tone sharp. "Don't insult me with more lies. I have the texts, the photos, and the letters. I even know about the embezzlement." Her eyes widened, panic flashing across her face. "What are you talking about?" I leaned forward, my gaze unyielding. "Eric's little scheme at the office. The falsified invoices, the fake expense reports, you covered for him, didn't you? Don't bother denying it. I have the proof. Rebecca sank back onto the couch, her bravado crumbling. You don't understand, she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. It wasn't supposed to be like this. I felt so alone, and Eric. Stop, I said, cutting her off. This isn't about loneliness. This is about greed and betrayal. You weren't just cheating on me, you were planning to destroy everything we built together. Tears welled up in her eyes, but I felt no sympathy. I was going to tell you, she murmured. I laughed bitterly. Tell me? When? After you emptied our accounts and walked out the door? After you dragged Lily into this mess? At the mention of our daughter, Rebecca flinched. I never wanted to hurt her, she said desperately. But you did, I said coldly. Your lies didn't just hurt me, they hurt her too. And now, she's going to see the consequences of your actions. Rebecca's tears turned to anger. You can't do this to me, she said, her voice shaking. You have no right. I have every right, I said firmly. You've lied, cheated, and stolen. And now, you're going to face the consequences. I stood, pulling out a set of divorce papers. These have already been filed, I said, placing them on the table. I've frozen the accounts, and my lawyer has ensured the house remains with me. You'll get what's fair, but nothing more. Rebecca stared at the papers, her hands trembling. You can't just cut me out of your life like this. You cut yourself out, I said, my voice steady. The moment you chose Eric over us, you ended this marriage. Now, pack your things and leave. Rebecca left that night, taking only what she could carry. The house felt quieter, emptier, but for the first time in months, I felt a sense of peace. Lily, who had overheard parts of the confrontation, came to me later that night. Is Mom gone? She asked hesitantly. I nodded, pulling her into a hug. She is. But we're going to be okay, Emily. I promise. She nodded against my chest, and I felt a glimmer of hope. Rebecca's betrayal had left scars, but they weren't insurmountable. We still had each other, and that was enough to start rebuilding. The days following Rebecca's departure were a whirlwind of adjustments. The house felt unnaturally quiet, like the air itself was holding its breath. I tried to focus on the logistics, canceling her access to accounts, informing her lawyer about the divorce proceedings, and explaining the situation to close family. But the emotional toll lingered, especially with Lily. Emily had always been perceptive, but now, she was unusually reserved. At 17, she was old enough to understand betrayal, yet too young to process it without feeling caught in the middle. I knew I had to step up for her, no matter how raw my own emotions were. One evening, as we sat at the dining table eating takeout, Emily finally spoke. Dad, she said quietly, pushing her fries around her plate, what happens now? I set my fork down and looked at her. We keep moving forward, I said. I know this feels like everything's falling apart, but we're going to get through it. Together. Her eyes met mine, filled with doubt. It just feels different. Like nothing will ever be the same. I reached across the table, placing a hand over hers. You're right, it won't be the same. But different doesn't mean worse. It just means we'll make new memories, new traditions. And no matter what, you'll always have me. A small smile tugged at her lips. Thanks, Dad. In that moment, I realized something. As painful as Rebecca's betrayal was, it had also given me the chance to reconnect with my daughter. That was a silver lining I wasn't going to waste. Rebecca didn't disappear entirely. She reached out through her lawyer, proposing a series of settlements that ranged from unreasonable to downright laughable. Each time, my lawyer responded firmly, dismantling her demands with the evidence we'd collected. She tried to play the sympathy card, sending me long emails filled with excuses and half-hearted apologies. In one, she wrote, I never wanted to hurt you. I just felt so lost, so unfulfilled. Can't we talk about this? For Emily's sake? I didn't reply. There was nothing left to say. With the legal battles under control, I shifted my focus to rebuilding our lives. Emily and I started making small changes around the house, repainting the living room, rearranging furniture, and even planting a garden in the backyard. It was cathartic, a way to reclaim the space that had once felt so heavy with tension. One weekend, while sorting through old boxes, Emily found a photo album from when she was little. We spent hours flipping through the pages, laughing at her childhood antics and reminiscing about happier times. "Mom looks so different here," Emily said softly, tracing a finger over one of the photos. "She does," I agreed, my voice steady. "People change, Emily. Sometimes for the better, sometimes not. What matters is how we move forward." She nodded, closing the album with a quiet determination. "I think we'll be okay." For the first time in years, I started focusing on myself. I went back to the gym, reconnected with old friends, and even joined a local community group that organized outdoor adventures. One Saturday, during a hiking trip, I met someone, a woman named Claire. She was kind, down to earth, and funny in a way that caught me off guard. We exchanged numbers, and while I wasn't ready to jump into anything serious, it felt good to talk to someone without the weight of past betrayals hanging over me. As the months passed, the wounds Rebecca had left began to heal. Emily grew more confident, thriving in school and making plans for college. I found peace in the little things: Sunday mornings with coffee on the porch, evening walks with our dog, and the quiet satisfaction of knowing we were rebuilding our lives on a foundation of honesty and trust. Rebecca's betrayal had been devastating, but it didn't define us. It was a chapter, one we were ready to close. By the time the divorce was finalized, the raw anger I'd felt toward Rebecca had dulled into something quieter: acceptance. The court ruled in my favor on nearly every issue. I kept the house, the majority of our joint assets, and most importantly, full custody of Emily. Rebecca moved to another city with little fanfare. Her relationship with Eric had fallen apart under the weight of the embezzlement scandal, and the last I heard, she was struggling to hold down a job. I didn't take pleasure in her downfall, but I also didn't waste energy feeling sorry for her. A few weeks after the divorce, Rebecca asked to meet for coffee. I was hesitant but agreed, knowing it was better to face her directly than leave anything unresolved. She looked different when I arrived at the cafe, tired, worn down. As we sat across from each other, she fiddled with her cup, avoiding my gaze. "Thank you for coming," she said finally. "What do you need, Rebecca?" I asked, keeping my tone neutral. She sighed, her shoulders slumping. "I just wanted to say, I'm sorry. For everything. I know I ruined what we had, and I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but I needed you to hear it." I studied her for a moment, searching for sincerity. "I appreciate the apology," I said carefully. "But forgiveness doesn't change what happened. It doesn't undo the damage." Her eyes glistened with unshed tears. "I know. I hope one day you'll remember the good times, not just the bad." I nodded slowly, standing to leave. "Take care of yourself, Rebecca." As I walked out of the cafe, I felt lighter, as if a weight I didn't realize I was carrying had been lifted. Closure didn't mean forgetting, but it did mean moving forward without the burden of resentment. Life with Emily flourished in the months that followed. She had grown into a resilient young woman, her confidence shining brighter each day. Watching her succeed gave me purpose, and I took pride in knowing we had weathered the storm together. Claire and I had begun to see each other more often. She was a refreshing presence in my life, honest, kind, and understanding. She didn't push for more than I was ready to give, and for the first time in years, I felt hope for the future. One evening, as Emily and I sat on the back porch, she turned to me with a thoughtful expression. "You're smiling more these days," she said. I looked at her, surprised. "Am I?" She nodded, grinning. "Yeah. It's nice. You deserve to be happy, Dad." Her words hit me harder than I expected. "Thanks, Emily. So do you?" The scars of Rebecca's betrayal were still there, faint but present. They served as a reminder of what I'd endured, but also of how far I'd come. As I sat in my study one quiet evening, I flipped through an old notebook and found a quote I'd written down years ago: "Adversity doesn't build character, it reveals it." That was the lesson Rebecca's betrayal had taught me. It revealed my strength, my priorities, and the unshakable bond between Emily and me. I closed the notebook, poured a small glass of bourbon, and stepped outside to watch the sunset. The road ahead was still uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, I felt ready for whatever came next. A year had passed since Rebecca left, and though the wounds she caused would never fully disappear, life had transformed in ways I hadn't thought possible. Emily was thriving. She'd been accepted to her top-choice college, and her passion for creative writing was blossoming into a promising career path. Watching her confidence grow was a reminder that even in the darkest times, resilience could shine through. As for me, I'd learned to embrace the quiet joys of everyday life. The house felt lighter now, filled with laughter and peace rather than tension and deceit. Claire had become an important part of my life, though I was careful to move forward at a pace that felt right for both of us. She had a way of grounding me, reminding me that happiness wasn't something to chase, but something to cultivate. One evening, as Emily prepared to leave for college, we sat on the porch together, the same place where we'd shared so many quiet talks over the past year. "Are you nervous?" I asked, handing her a mug of tea. "A little," she admitted, wrapping her hands around the warm cup. "But mostly excited. It feels like a fresh start." I smiled, the pride swelling in my chest. "You're going to do great things, Emily. I'm proud of you." She looked at me, her eyes shining. "Thanks, Dad. For everything. You've been my rock through all of this." Her words caught me off guard, and I had to swallow the lump in my throat. "You've been my rock too, you know. We got through this together." The day Emily left for college, I stood in the driveway watching her car disappear down the street. The silence that followed was bittersweet, a mix of pride and the ache of letting go. But as I stepped back into the house, I didn't feel alone. The memories of the past year, the struggles, the victories, the moments of quiet understanding, filled the space with a sense of purpose. I'd lost a lot when Rebecca betrayed me, but I'd also gained something far greater: clarity about what truly mattered. As the months turned into years, life continued to unfold in unexpected ways. I found joy in the simple things: weekend hikes with Claire, updates from Emily about her classes, and the steady rhythm of a life rebuilt on trust and authenticity. The betrayal that once felt like an unbearable weight had become a chapter, not the whole story. It was part of my past, but it no longer defined me. One evening, as I watched the sunset from the porch, Claire joined me, her hand slipping into mine. "Thinking about anything in particular?" she asked. I shook my head, smiling. "Just enjoying the moment." And for the first time in years, that was enough.